Hello guys, it's Monty here back again today. We're going to be talking about It by Stephen King. Have to have it on this giant computer screen because I didn't read a physical copy. Listen to the audiobook since September, I believe, is what Goodreads told me this morning when I went to write my review. We're going to set that to the side. It's been awkward to hold up. Hopefully it made the thumbnail worth it, even though it's going to look super awkward. So Stephen King, he wrote it about like 3 decades ago. If you haven't read it, it's supposed to be a horror novel. It takes place in Derry, Maine. Last year, 2017, there was a new movie. There will be another sequel to the movie to finish the story in the next couple of years. Don't know when exactly. Probably won't watch it because I'm not actually a huge horror fan. It just seemed like a fitting book to read in October, and then I didn't finish it, and then it was just on my phone taking up space, and so I was like, I should finish it. And I'm really happy that I did. On the whole, I really enjoyed the book. Like I said in my Goodreads review, I didn't really see it as a horror novel. I saw it more as literary fiction. It reminded me more of novels like A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, or even Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, or even Haruki Murakami's 1Q84, which are all similar in length to It by Stephen King. They're all 900 plus pages. They all have this thing where the author will go on a tangent. They all have this need to explain things that I don't really think need to be explained as in depth in the moment that I'm listening to it. But when I look back, I'm like, I'm really happy that those things were fleshed out. I'm really enjoying the fact that I know these things, but in the moment, it's not a pleasant experience. And I think that when reading all of those books, there was a moment where I hit the wall, and it was like, do I want to continue? I do, but at the same time, is it worth it? But there was never a moment that it was like when you hit the wall in A Little Life or Gone with the Wind or 1Q84 or It, you hit the wall because you like the story. I think you hit it because you like what's happening, but what's happening is happening so slowly, and there's never any kind of payoff. So it doesn't feel worth it because it's like I like it. I'm enjoying these moments, but I'm not really getting anything out of it, and it is a little depressing. The things I liked about it were mainly the characters. I liked all of the kids. I liked them more as adults, partially because I liked the writing of them all coming back to Derry, because that's part of the story, obviously, is they have to come back. I liked those parts of the book a really lot. So I liked the adult characters more than I liked their kid versions. And I don't think it's really an even 50-50 split. Like, most of the book is with the kids. And a part of me was really let down by that, even though technically they're the same characters. I just didn't really care for those moments of the story. Even though when they are kids, that's more when we have Pennywise, who is the villain of the piece, who is the antagonist. I wouldn't really call him a villain. Pennywise is meant to bring the scary horror aspect, but honestly, it was more like a grotesque thing. Like, a lot of the horror in the book is like a lot of blood, imagery. So if you can't deal with that, this is not the book for you. There's a lot of death in the book, obviously. It's a lot of gratuitous stuff. You hear about characters bleeding out or rims being ripped off, things of that nature. There's a lot of like defecation and feces, things of that nature. So in my mind, it's not really horror so much as it is just like gross to for me to listen to, but I can see how it would be gross to read. But there's nothing in this book that is really haunting or scary or like kept me up at night. Just like, and I'm an easily frightened person. Like, I cannot watch horror movies, but I can like sort of make my way through scary books and things. But there was never a moment in it where I would like go to bed at night, lay down, hear something, and go, "Oh my goodness, like what is that?" And that's something that I would do if I like watched a scary movie. So I don't see this book as horror. I do see it more as literary fiction with some sort of magical, not magical realism, but just like full on. At some points, the book really is just full on fantasy. Like there are full on fantasy elements in this book. So there is that. So I liked the characters. That's the only thing. If you don't like the characters of this book, you're not gonna get through it. Like, because there's not a whole lot to like. It's not scary. It's not horror. It's like characters, and it's a bunch of these characters, and you hear their story, and you're growing with them as they try to like figure out what's happening, not only in their lives, but like with Pennywise, this clown, what is going on with that shit. You get a lot of town history, so like that's kind of cool. But if you don't like the characters, there's simply no way you can like the book, because the plot of the book is each of the kids' first interaction with Pennywise. And then after we've had that, it's each character coming back to Derry. And after we've had that, there's a lot of side stuff. Like, you really could condense this book down to be less than the 1,100 pages that it is, to be, not a 30-hour audiobook. There is a lot of room for condensation, like, to condense things. But I feel like you would, and I say that a lot. Every time I read a literary fiction novel I found, like with 1Q84, I thought it could be shorter. With Gone with the Wind, I thought it could be shorter. With A Little Life, I thought it could be shorter. So these kinds of novels, in retrospect, I like elements of it, like the writing, the windy paths and things. At the same time, though, if you had an editor that came in and like sliced the book down to 500 pages, you wouldn't lose a lot of meaningful content. You would lose content that's nice to have when you know it's there, but if you didn't ever know it was there, like if there was like a child's version. I remember when I was a kid, I had like the abridged version of like Heidi and Tom Sawyer. If there was an abridged version of it, I don't think you would lose anything reading that story versus the original. And I think you do lose that when you read the abridged version of like Heidi or Tom Sawyer. So you could cut things and you wouldn't lose it. It's a lot of, kids' first interaction with it, the adults coming back, and then the climax of the book where the kids are going to fight it and the adults are going to fight it happens simultaneously in the last like 2 hours of the book. And that was probably by far the most confusing part of the novel to listen to, and I didn't really appreciate it. And so overall, if you don't want to go into spoilers, 8 minutes in, I think that's a good place to stop it. If you don't want to go into spoilers, I can't really recommend the book, at least not to people who are going for something that is straight horror, who want to be scared, who want to be frightened. Like, unless blood and feces and, like, it's not even it's not a clown for most of the time. So I can't even say if you're scared of clowns, you should read it, because most of it is it taking the shape of the kid's fear. So if you don't like that, if you don't like parts that delve into town history, much like in the graphic novel Watchmen, where you get kind of like these bits between the story, you probably won't like this book. I can't recommend it to you. If you like character journeys, if you like spending a lot of time with a character and getting to know them and getting to care about them, I would say I could recommend it to you. Just know going in that stuff happens at the end of the book that sort of undermines all of that. So there is that. But now we're going to talk spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled for this book, then now is a good time to leave. If you're still here, we're going to talk spoilers. And the first thing I want to talk about when I talk spoilers is the end of the book. The end of the book, I heard about when the movie was coming out, because every movie reviewer was praising the fact they took out all of the Losers Club, so Eddie and Ben and Bill and Richie and Mike. There's another one I'm leaving out. I don't know. I know Stanley wasn't there because Stanley was dead. But I feel like I got everybody. I don't know. They all sleep with Beverly in the sewers as kids when they fight it, to sort of bring them together. And I thought that was stupid when I heard about it months before I read the book. And then I was reading the book, and it was the most awkward thing to listen to. It felt like it came out of nowhere. It was during that part of the book that felt like it didn't really fit in with the rest of the book. I didn't really appreciate it. I didn't like it. I didn't think that it added anything. I thought, if anything, it detracted from the rest of the novel. I thought that the earlier scene in the house on Newbolt Street when they were fighting Pennywise there, I felt that was a much more intense... No, Stanley was there as a kid. My bad. Sorry, Stanley. Stanley was actually one of my favorite characters, and when Stanley slit his wrists, I was gutted. Because even though at that point in the novel, you don't actually know you don't really know Stanley at that point. Like, when Stanley slits his wrists in that moment, he's sort of a character that you know is going to be important because he's one of the kids, but you haven't really had an opportunity to get to know him yet, so it sucks in that regard, but at the same time, it's like, whatever. Gutted by Stanley's death. Stanley Uris has a heart. He has a place in my heart for, like, the rest of my life. Top 10 fictional characters. Love me some Stanley Uris. Boy is amazing. Anyway, when they all sleep with Beverly, it was stupid. The whole ending of the book where they're fighting it as adults and as children is shit. It makes absolutely no sense. I don't agree with anything that happens in that whole situation. I didn't understand how it could be like, oh, I'm scared for my life, while also going, oh, I'm invincible. It was stupid. The whole thing with the turtle was stupid. I vaguely remember the turtle being referenced earlier. But that was stupid. Like, that's really where a lot of these, like, supernatural, weird elements started getting plugged into the plot, and I didn't care about any of them. So, could have gone away, wouldn't have cared. The whole ending was crap. The kid sleeping with Beverly was crap. When they left Eddie in the sewer as an adult to just be down there. That was crap. Like, the whole end, Bill and Audra was crap. It was all stupid. So stupid. But what really annoyed me at the ending of the book was when, as adults, when they destroyed it for the last time, everyone started to lose their memory. And that really hurt me, because the only thing you have for 1,100 pages, or 30 hours if you listen to this audiobook, is the characters. And all they have, really, are their memories. At least most of the characters. Bill and Beverly and Ben and Eddie and Stanley before, Eddie and Stanley died. They all have a life outside of Derry. They all got to go on and be successful and have money. Stanley died, he killed himself, whatever. And, Eddie wasn't all that happy in his marriage. Fine. All of these other characters got to leave Derry, but the only thing that Mike Handlin had was his memories. That he was the one who remembered everything. That he was the watcher. He was the one that brought everybody together. And when they first get together in that library and they're talking about how everyone else got to go on and be successful, even if Eddie had, a bad marriage, and even if, I don't want to say even if Beverly was abused, because that was a whole subplot to the thing where Beverly was the only female character in this book, and she was routinely physically abused by her father. She was probably sexually abused by her father. She was gang-banged by a bunch of teenagers in the sewer. They weren't even teenagers. They were like 10 years old. Like 10, 11 years old in this book. Gang-banging her in the sewer. Like, this girl was fucking traumatized. So I don't want to be like, oh, she had all this money when she grew up so everything was okay. Because it's really not. I just want to say that everyone else, though, had these careers and these lives outside of Derry, Maine. And when it was gone the second time and they all left Derry again, they all had something to go back to. I mean, Beverly, she was able... At the end of the book, she was actually freed from Tom, her abusive husband, so that was good. He was dead. And she got to be with Ben, even though that made no sense, because 5 minutes before, she was talking about, oh, Bill, I love you, Bill. But then she ran off and was with Ben, and I was like, I don't get it. Like, are you just with him because you knew he loved you when you were, 11? But, at this point, you're not going to remember anything, so how important is that to you, really? It was weird. But Mike Hanlon literally had nothing. He had the library, and he had being the Watcher, so he had the least amount of money out of everybody, and he was the only black character in this book. So, for me, I was there for Mike. Mike was my person. Every conversation that Mike had with his dad, I cherished. Every time Mike got to do something, I cherished it. Because for a lot of the early parts of the book, Mike isn't there. Mike isn't really an integral part of the Losers Club in my mind until about midway through the novel. You get his interludes, you get perspective from Mike. Mike brings everyone back, so it's not like he's absent from the narrative. But his presence in the narrative isn't like everybody else's presence in the narrative, and it's very different. And another thing I did not really appreciate about this book was just the blatant use of racial slurs. Like, I can't tell you how many times Stephen King wrote the word nigger. I thought I was, like, watching a Quentin Tarantino movie, and I was like, dude, you're white, please stop. I don't care if your book takes place in the 1950s. I don't care if you have a book that takes place in the 1980s. You can write a book that takes place there with black people, describing events that happened previously without using a racial slur. It is fucking possible. I promise you. You are a fucking author. I don't need to hear the word nigger. I don't need to hear the word coon. I don't need to hear the word... I don't need it. And what really exacerbated the problem was, if just these tertiary characters were using this word in the 1950s setting, or the 1980s setting, or the times we get about Mike's dad, so like the 1920 times, 1930s, like that sort of era, 1940s, whatever... Fine, these tertiary, unimportant characters. But it's not just that. Because Stephen King decided to give Richie Tozier, a character who I otherwise would fucking love. Like, Richie Tozier, I could easily see myself falling in love with a version of this character that doesn't feel the need to use a pickaninny voice for comic relief, to use his nigger Jim voice for comic relief. These things are just blatantly fucking racist. And for everyone in this novel to just be perfectly okay with calling out Henry Bowers for his blatant, anti-Semitism, and calling him crazy, and calling him out on his racism, and all those other things, for the novel to, sort of pat itself on the back for calling out these characters who are racist, like Henry and his dad, while meanwhile having Richie Tozier, one of our protagonists, one of our heroes, one of the kids we're supposed to, look at and go, this is the sort of character person we want, for him to be able to do his pickaninny voice and his nigger Jim voice all the time. And I can understand that I could have a bigger issue with this because I listened to the audiobook, and so every time it happened in the book, I had to hear the voice actor do this, and it was just too much, because those things are blatantly racist. I think we can all agree on that. It was just not something I felt was necessary in the novel. And so when Richie Tozier might have been dead at the end of the novel, was I upset? A little, not gonna lie, because I did still care about his character. But I was like, dude, you literally have all these other impersonations. Just do one of them. I don't need to hear the nigger Jim voice again. I don't need to hear your pickaninny voice again. Just do your Irish cop or your English dude. Literally any other voice besides the two blatantly racist ones that sounded exactly the same. And so they're pretty much just the same voice. Hats off to the voice actor, though. If you're going to do a racial stereotype, at least he did the racial stereotype just... It was a mess. That whole aspect of the novel was a mess. I also can't even talk about the use of, the word faggot. That was also annoying. That's also a slur. Let's not... And I get, in, 1980s, it probably wasn't as big a deal to people as it is today. But, it wasn't necessary to the novel. It wasn't, it was necessary in the sense that it provided, characterization of the person saying it. It was easy, fill in the blank. You used a slur, you're obviously a bad person. So when Pennywise kills you and frames you for or kills the person, and you get framed for the murder, the reader's not going to feel bad for you because you're obviously, it it was easy characterization. It was an easy way out. I didn't appreciate it. Like Stephen King, you could have done something better. I promise you. Like, you're an author. I'm sure it's not that difficult. 1 second. I'm yelling in the camera. I need to drink some tea. So I didn't appreciate those aspects of the novel. Again, I also thought it could be condensed. But, you know, as far as spoilers go, that's pretty much it. If you've read It by Stephen King, it's been out for a while. There has to be a lot of people who've read this book by now. Feel free to leave your comments down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys back again at some point in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later, with another video. But until then, guys, bye.